This is the Extra Point Podcast. During this podcast, we will dive deeper into our Sunday teaching and share practical next steps for your faith journey. Now, let's kick off the Extra Point.
Hey, welcome to the Extra Point. I'm Cheryl Ross, the Next Steps and Discipleship Pastor here at Southwood Church, and I'm with Scott Beha, our lead pastor, who is back with us today. And we are in celebration mode for our behind-the-scenes helper, who is our worship leader, Jared Bodker. So happy birthday to him. But which this kind of goes along with what you talked about on Sunday, because there's a lot of things that we do that we don't always get noticed for, recognized for. We don't get the recognition for. And so you talked on Sunday, Pastor Scott, about how will you still say yes? Will you still do things if nobody knows your name and knows you're doing it? And so this is a little nod to Pastor Jared for helping us do this every week, but also if you want to give a little bit of a brief rundown from what we talked about.
It is a good example of what we talked about yesterday. In fact, every single Sunday at Southridge Church is an example of what we talked about yesterday. Because I understand the fact I'm the guy out in the lobby that everyone comes by and goes, that was a great service. Because they don't know, like, or I'm out there, so whatever. But I think everyone intuitively knows, like, the amount of things that are happening in preparation for whatever we do that people, like, don't even know. You know, the fact there's two people sitting in this room with us right now.
Right.
If you didn't know better to know that, of course, something like this requires production, you would think, well, this is all just Scott and Cheryl. It's like, no, there's other people. Same thing with Sunday. Like, we have people in our production booth. But even down to, we have people rocking babies in the nursery that nobody's writing their name in lights.
Right.
But if there was 8 screaming babies in here when I'm trying to preach, it would drastically affect the environment of and the ability to do what we do on a Sunday. And then nobody sees the worship team coming up here on Thursday after probably being here on Wednesday for a small group, or on Sunday night for a small, and giving that time to come and to rehearse. And no one, it's like no one's going to pat you on the back for showing up or working on your own at your house to get better. And there's greeters and parking lot people that even though you see their face, you're not thinking about the fact that, like, they are adding to the experience in every possible way. Even the sermons that I write, like, if I'm doing an illustration, by and large, I'm not the one that's coming up with the supplies for that. Or, like, especially if there's any art or writing that has to be done, I'm not the one that does it.
Right.
And so there's always someone else that has contributed. And then I'm also sending my sermon to, like, 5 people a week. They're giving feedback to help improve the sermon.
Right.
And so it is a picture of, like, this is what we're talking about. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes. And, yes, somebody is always going to get credit for stuff. But we don't have to live our lives as, like, man, that's got to be me. I don't have. We don't have to be like the little girl in the shake and bake commercial, and it goes, "Oh, I helped. It's like, it doesn't matter, because at the moment that we begin to live for the praises of people, then that will be the only reward that you will ever get, is the praise of people, which is actually really shallow and really doesn't amount to anything, because people, for the most part, don't even know what they're talking about. You know, like, and I don't mean that, like, to be demeaning. I'm just saying, like, who cares if someone goes, oh, wow, you did that really well. Like, okay, that maybe, but are you an expert in that to even say that someone did it well? Like, are you living and dying by the thoughts and the opinions of people? It's going to destroy you. And so that's why you don't need credit. You don't need, oh, please say my name, and again, I told everyone Sunday, this is, like, deeply personal for me, because even though I'm the one teaching it, I'm probably the one in the room that struggles the most with it. I mean, it like, this is tough for me, and I think that's probably why the Lord told me that this is what I was going to be preaching like a month ago, was about how to essentially, like, embrace anonymity and obscurity and just be okay with that. And, we've talked about it on this podcast before. Like, if the Lord ever wants to promote us, let's let him do it.
Right.
Let's let him be the one that promotes us instead of us going and grasping for our own places of position and power and things like that.
Right.
Let's let him do it. Let's trust him to do that. Let's go and do good. And we don't need to, if you take a single mom in your neighborhood dinner one night, you don't have to go tell people about that.
Right.
It happened even though Facebook doesn't know about
Right.
it. Like, you don't, it honestly, it robs you of the, because again, there's a blessing, sure. But you're going to get robbed of that blessing if you trade that blessing in for the praise of people by going and bragging about what you did. Like, it's possible to just do good for the sake of doing good.
Yeah, and I think it's like you have to also remember that when you do those things, like say you do take the single mom a meal or whatever and you brag about it, how does that come across to the single mom? You know what I mean? How does that like show them like that you were really actually caring for them, or that you were doing it just for this? And so like the motive behind those things really matter. And I want to go there in a second, but also like when you wait for God to give you that moment to promote you, when you're waiting on him and you actually do it when he does it, you're going to be fully ready. Because I think that's the thing that like a lot of times we want the stages and the platforms and the things, but we are not, our character may not be ready.
100%.
Our family may not be ready for that. Like there's so many things and aspects within that need to be in a place that can handle that.
Yeah. In 2012, our church went through a pastoral transition. I had been in ministry since December 1st, 2011. I thought in 2012 I could pastor this church with all 8 months of my ministry experience. And I was like 3 classes deep into seminary. If that had happened, I would not be in ministry at this church to this day. Like, I would have already been ran out of town because I wasn't ready. There had to be a training process and a training ground to get ready for that. But like, we all have this idea like, oh, I want that. But I'm telling you, I think a lot of the stories that we see of these pastors that are finding themselves in trouble are because they got somewhere really, really fast and they didn't have that opportunity for the Lord to take care of their character first. And I can tell you, first and foremost, I like I said Sunday, like I made this comment. I was like, I wish I didn't say it like that because it's not how I meant it. But like I said, if the Lord asked me to just pastor our little small church here for the rest of my life, that it'll be enough. And I get that some people look and go, you had 525 people here yesterday. You're not pastoring a small church. I don't mean small. I'm just saying if it's just us, it's okay.
No matter what us represents, like whatever number that represents.
It's okay if that's what it is. And there's nothing. The point I was trying to get across was, as far as God is concerned, if I'm being faithful with the however many he's given me here, he's not any more pleased with me if he were to move me to a church of 5,000. That's like those sorts of things when it comes to, I think, bigger stage, this or that. No. Like, you need a time to get ready for that, because if not, you could really, and I'll tell you right now, I can tell you personally, I am at a place now in 2025 that I have longed to be in my walk with the Lord since I got saved. And I wasn't here in 2012, 2013, 2014, all these years that I would have told you, like, oh, yeah, I'm ready to be a lead pastor. No, I wasn't at all. And some of these guys, they accelerated so fast. They did not have that chance to just, in relative obscurity and anonymity, be able to iron out all the rough spots in them before they make a mess of their life and their family and their church and ruin the gift that God has put into them. And I'm very thankful, even though when I hit 30, I started to feel like a clock was going off, because you see all these stories of like guys by their, some guys by their 30s, it's like, man, they're already preaching to 5,000, 10,000 people or whatever. And when I hit 30, I started feeling like that clock go off, and I was like, the longer I'm in ministry, I start realizing actually there's a lot more stories of the people that have stayed somewhere faithfully for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years that ended up with the church that they wanted all along.
Yeah.
Rather than that rapid growth that ends up a lot of times destroying a family or destroying an individual.
Yeah.
So I think embracing whatever God puts in front of us. Again, if he calls you to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, go and do that to the best of your ability. If he calls you to be a kindergarten teacher, go and be faithful in that. If he calls you to whatever it is, that is really the point I was trying to get across. I don't know that I did it super eloquently, but like
it's that faithful obedience to do whatever, wherever you are, whatever you're doing to the best of your ability. I think remembering that whatever it is, you're doing it for him. What's the verse that says, like, do it unto, as if you're doing it unto the Lord?
3, I think. Like, everything that you do it unto the Lord. Like, whatever it is. And again, if it comes to serving the poor or whatever, I saw a video. I didn't fact check this because I was just scrolling social media, but I saw a video last week where someone was serving a homeless woman on the streets, had a camera with them. The homeless woman went nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was true. It could have been staged for clicks. But, like, went nuts. Like, you're trying to make money off of you serving me.
Yeah.
Like, she went nuts over it. I was like, yeah, of course. Like, you shouldn't, if you're trying to do stuff like that, like, it's cool to do good for other people. Yeah. And if you're, again, someone told me after service, they're like, well, sometimes I post because I'm trying to encourage other people to do the same. And I go, I get that. I do. But I wonder if it is encouraging other people to do the same, or are we getting praise for it? And I don't want to trade the praise of people for the blessing of God, because one of the things I told you I wanted to get into today was I don't want Sunday's sermon to sound like there's nothing in it for you.
Right.
I'm saying that has to be your motive, but we also understand that we serve a God that blesses his people.
Yes.
That blesses faithfulness, that blesses obedience.
Yeah, so you do the things, but you're not doing it for this.
He's not forced to do it,
like
but
from
he does
a place
Yes.
of God has done so much for me.
Yes.
And he's given me the resources. He's given me the time. He's given me the ability. He's given me the whatever to go and do these things. So I'm going to do those things because of where I'm at, because of what I know that God has done for me.
Yeah.
And if I get something in return, great.
Exactly.
But if not, great.
I've already been blessed by God more than what I could ever possibly deserve. So it doesn't really matter if I get anything out of it. Although I do know the principles of Scripture that if you sow, you'll reap.
Yes.
I'm not saying that our Sermon Sunday does not discount the fact that this is the way that God has created the world, is that when you sow good things, normally good things come back to you. That's not karma or anything else secular that the world tries to call it. That's Galatians 6. When you sow good things, you should reap good things. But even if you don't, you should still sow good things.
Yeah, because sometimes the reaping doesn't happen immediately. Like even when you sow seeds and you do those things, like the harvest doesn't happen immediately. So sometimes it's immediate, sometimes it's real fast. Yeah. Other times it's a waiting thing, and you might not make that connection until years down the road when you look back and you're like, oh, this is because that. But so we have to keep that in mind too, is that like just because you don't have an immediate thing or in the way that maybe you think, like doesn't mean that it's not happening either. Yeah. That there's often time that passes before the good comes back to you.
Yeah, you gotta play the long game in life. You know, we played in a travel baseball tournament this weekend that had some pretty strict pitching rules. And right now I'm having to play without 2 of my kids because they're playing middle school ball. They can't play travel right now. And so I only have 9 kids. Probably 6 or 7 of them pitch. And so I knew it was going to be a really tough weekend because this pitch count rule was like more intensive than what it normally is. And I was like, I don't know how we're going to make it through the weekend. And then I had Landon pitched in a middle school game on Saturday. And I was telling him, I said, I might pitch you a little bit on Sunday, but I'm not going to pitch you that much. And I said, here's why. There is no game when you're 11 years old that matters if we win. That would be worth destroying your arm over. I said, it's just, what, for a $6 plastic ring? That's silliness. I said, if you actually have aspirations to be great in the future, we have to take care of your arm right now. So you have to make decisions now that will benefit you in the future. And so you have to play the long game. You don't just go, all right, Lord, I'm going to give you this money, and I better see something back. And if I don't see something back, well, then I'm not going, well, then apparently it doesn't work. It's like, no. Our giving, our service, our church attendance, you fill in the blank, does not force God to do anything. No one in the history of the world has ever forced God to do anything. He, out of the goodness and the graciousness of his heart, for whatever reason, blesses people. And it does, to me, it's. I know that it's not, because God's not random, but to humanity it feels random. Because the scriptures even tell us that God even blesses the unrighteous, right? Everyone knows a business owner that's a millionaire that could not be further from God. Right? Everybody knows those stories because God blesses as he sees fit, and all blessing. If you see a rich millionaire, it was from the Lord, because all blessing comes from the Lord. And we don't know why he would choose to bless them and then watch a Christian family that's trying to raise godly children and do everything they can and try to bless people, struggle financially. And we go, well, this doesn't make any sense. And it's like, listen, we don't understand how God chooses to bless, but we do know that he does bless. And sometimes it's not just monetarily, or it doesn't always just come back to you in kind. It's like, for me, I feel, I told you, I feel better now in my walk with the Lord than I probably ever have. And I'm not reaping anything tangible in the sense that there's not money just popping into my bank account. All these speaking engagements aren't just popping up that are going to feed my family. No, none of that. It's Galatians 6. I think it's Galatians 6, that there's going to be a harvest of righteousness. And that's actually what I feel like I'm reaping right now from obedience in my life is, see, disobedience always leads to like shame and guilt. And then you sit there and have these conversations in your head all week long thinking about, how awful and terrible and nasty you are because you did this, and this, and you struggled in these ways. And when you're actually being obedient to the Lord, you get to reap a harvest of righteousness where you go, I don't have to deal with shame and guilt because I haven't been doing things that bring about shame and guilt. And sometimes that's what it looks like, is just that the blessing the blessing of obedience is obedience because it doesn't add to the brokenness of your life. And that can be a blessing also. And then sometimes you can, offer something up unto the Lord, and then something crazy happens in your life. And you're like, whoa, I don't know where this came from. I got a promotion at work, or I got a job offer for 2 times the money. Sure, that stuff happens as well. So I don't want Sunday to feel like, hey, let's go and do all this good. There's never going to be anything in it for you. But if that were the case, it would still be worth doing it.
Yeah.
But I do think God blesses.
Yeah, so the motive absolutely 100% matters. Also, the ability and responsibility also matters, because just because you have the ability to do something doesn't mean that that's going to always be your responsibility, right? Yeah. And so that's what, like, we've talked about. Like, yes, you have the ability to be an amazing speaker and speak to thousands probably and impact many people's lives, but that isn't your responsibility. And I think we see this like in the life of David a lot. Like, this is what I think David teaches us really well, is that David was anointed and had the ability to be king a lot earlier before he was king, right? He went and he played harp. He delivered sandwiches to his family. Like, he did all these things before then, but he was faithful wherever he was in the moments leading up to that. And I think that is incredibly important for us to remember and hold on to, is that just because you have the ability to do something doesn't mean that it's always going to line up with where you are, but just be faithful and obedient in those things. Yeah.
I mean, I've never been more committed to, like, the older you get, I think the wiser you get in a lot of ways. And some of the youthful arrogance starts to fall off. And it just goes like, this is where God has me. And if it ever sounds like I'm ungrateful for that, I'm not whatsoever. I'm very thankful for this church, for where God has me, and this is where he wants me to be. And so I have no problem at this stage in my life giving my life to this congregation for as long as God sees fit.
Yeah,
Because,
and I want to say that you're not only doing that for the people that come and sit in the seats or watch online. You're also doing that for your staff, because, and I'm going to get emotional, but this past, on the 5th, I had the opportunity to go and speak at a women's conference called Beauty for Ashes. You know, and you're basically talking about how God, you use your story in a sense to talk about the brokenness and how God has made that into something great. And I spoke at that conference, and afterwards, like, one of the women who kind of lead that, she comes up and asked me in front of several people, "Why aren't you leading somewhere, Cheryl?" And I said, I don't feel that my time at Southridge is done. Like, I haven't been told by God to go anywhere else. And she was like, "Well, you did so great." And I said, "But honestly, that's because of the leadership that I have, that I sit under with Scott." I said, "I would not have been able to do a message like that and speak in that way had it not been for the way that you have led and done things here." And so you're also training up other people who maybe end up going out eventually. And that is part of your role here too. And so in that way, if you think about the other people that you have helped train up and have sent out, like, you are impacting so many other people. And so there's that other side of the behind the scenes things that happen, that it's not only this. And I think that's what you have to remember, is like that, almost that ripple effect of that happens in your faithfulness, is that this is happening in the moment, but you don't know that the seeds that you plant here aren't going forth and like reaping a harvest in their lives further in the future.
Yeah. Even we're raising up people in ministry here. And I feel like that's one of those things. Like, I feel like I got really clear on what God wanted me to do in life. As soon as I got really clear on what God wanted me to do in life, I got real comfortable just being where he has me. And that was, and I told a newer guy to our church last Friday about this. I said, I know why I'm still at Southridge is because the Lord told me to stay here to help get the church saved, which always gets people really uncomfortable when I say that, because they're like, wait a second. Like, no, listen, just because someone goes to church does not mean that they are saved. The church, every Sunday when we gather, is a mission field. All of those people in here are not saved, and I will continue to preach against cultural Christianity until we see a complete revival against that here in the Bible Belt. That's why God has me here. And then he has me here to help train up and send out people without a shadow of a doubt. Because, but even in addition to those, there's one other piece that I don't want to miss in the ripple effect. And that's, Andy Stanley used to say, your greatest contribution to the kingdom might not be something that you do, but somebody that you gave somebody that you raised. And so I know I have just felt even this year more, some of it's because of the Resurge podcast that we've been listening to, that episode on family. Like, I just feel this more so than ever need to tell my kids what it is that we're doing as a family. Because our kids, because they've only ever known Southridge, they don't realize what's going on here whatsoever. Like when my kids ask about what I do, like Landon's like, you just watch YouTube videos for work. That's all you ever do. And they don't see that, like, in January we were running like 350 people, and this month we've hit over 500 twice. They're like, so I try to explain that to them, because I go, listen, I told them Friday, Landon was supposed to, I'm not a stickler. Like, I let my kid play travel baseball. And so he misses a couple of Sundays, but we also find ways to get him around the people of God all the time. But like this Friday, Good Friday, he was supposed to have a middle school baseball game. I said, bud, we're not going. I said, Daddy preaches Friday. We're preaching about Jesus, and helping people meet Jesus is the number one. This is what our family is about, period. And I don't just say it. That's what he got to witness on Sunday when our travel team lost in our game Sunday afternoon. I sat them kids down. I said, it was Palm Sunday. I said, hey, does anyone know what today is? A couple of them, it's Palm Sunday. I said, well, what's that mean? I walked them through it, and I said, listen, here's what Palm Sunday means. I'm talking to 9, 11-year-olds and their parents. I said, it means that Jesus is king, and it means that he needs to be the king of every one of your all's lives. And so I'm not just telling my kids that our family is about helping people meet Jesus, and that's what I hope that they make their family about also. They get to witness that happen as Megan and I go and do that. And then last night, we don't have Sunday night church. So they were like, and I did have a speaking engagement at a church in Buffalo. And both of our kids did the normal, like, oh, we got to go to church again tonight. And I said, listen, your dad is going to go talk to these people about the gospel of Jesus Christ, and there is nothing more important that our family has been called to go and to do. And so I'm trying to be really intentional in those conversations, even with my kids, to go,
Yes.
I'm raising up pastors here at the church. That's why I believe in our internship program. We've sent people out from our church that have been ordained and are leading ministries. I'm coaching pastors through my job with the State Church of God. But still, I'm hoping that my kids end up in gospel ministry.
Yes.
And perhaps if I don't get to reach the thousands that maybe I wanted to a decade ago, maybe they will be the ones to go on and do that, and being able to stand behind and watch all the ripples that happen, and I don't have to go to someone else's church that was raised up under my leadership and go, I helped. I don't have, like, there's no need for any of that, because at the end of the day, all of us that have made Jesus the Lord of our life have already decided that the guy that was riding on the donkey is who we are going to make famous. And I'll tell you, there's days that I feel like the donkey. There are, if you missed that joke, I'll help you out later. And then there's days that I feel like the guy that offered the donkey up. And either way, even though I have those moments where I was sitting in Nashville going, this is what I didn't have the guts to say from the stage Sunday. I'm sitting in Nashville going, I could have taught every one of these and probably done better, to be honest. With the exception of 2 or 3 of the speakers, I was like, I could have done all of these sessions and probably, that's just my own human arrogance. It's not true by any means. It's just, I showed up at a youth event a couple years, I think it was last year sometime, and I saw one of my friends from youth ministry, and he said something. I said, I have this weird problem that everywhere I show up, I feel like I should be the speaker. Like this is my own internal struggle that I'm letting all of you on YouTube now just hear that the Lord is like trying to to fix this in me, because it's just, at the end of the day, I want to get, I am getting very comfortable with just, this is what God's called me to do. And whether it's 500, 1,000, 5,000, or 50 at some point in my life,
now,
I just want to be faithful to what the Lord has asked me to do.
So let me ask you this question, because I want to say a statement, but I want to ask you and hear your answer first. Do you feel that since you have made that switch of, I just want to be faithful where God has me, do you get more fulfillment from those moments and from what you're doing than
100%.
what you used to?
I love I love what I'm doing right now. Because again, everything, especially in ministry, everything has like levels. That it's like I didn't realize when I was early on in ministry how stressful it would be to lead the church, to lead Southridge in that 300 to 400 range. And now that I sit in where we're at right now, if I desired a church of, and I watch people just up and go somewhere else because there's bigger numbers, but we also don't always fully count the cost and realize at 1,000 people, the stress on my family and the stress on me is going to be drastically different. The challenges are going to be drastically different. And so I think we're always thinking that the grass is going to be greener on the other side. If I could just get there, it's like, I don't think that we always fully understand like what a blessing it is right now to be where we're at. And so I find like the fact that I get to raise my kids in the same town that both of their sets of grandparents, all of their aunts and uncles are all right here.
Yeah.
They're going to get to go to the same school pretty much the whole time that they're in school. They're going to have the same friends. They're going to be surrounded by the same people at church. That for me is worth me crucifying that ego to go, man, you could go to a major city and probably 10x what you're doing right now. Yeah, but why? Why? Like, God's blessing what we're doing here. I'm not comfortable, as I do feel like we're being stretched pretty good right now. But that's a good stretching.
Yes.
Like, I remember that quote from the Research podcast. He said, you don't know what the edge of your plate is until you actually fill your plate up.
Yes.
Because I used to think that I was busy. I used to think that that ministry was hard or taxing or whatever. And it was like, you really don't know what you're actually capable of until you actually fill your plate and to find out how much you can actually take on. Like, I see this as such an unbelievable blessing to get to do all of that. And still, I look out and I get to preach in the very spot that I proposed to my wife to. The altar I got saved at is still in this room. We baptized people in the baptistry that I got baptized in. Yeah.
That's special.
Do I have moments that I look and go, gosh, I would love to be preaching in front of 5,000 people, but I also don't know what the stress of that is, because I had to go preach to 150 people last night that I didn't know, and I touched Megan's hand right before I went up to preach. You would have thought it was my first time ever preaching. I was scared to death. So I'm like, I'm not scared to death to preach to 500 people here at Southridge on a weekend, but if I had to go preach to 500 people somewhere else that I didn't know, I'd be scared to death. I don't even know if I could handle something bigger than what the Lord has me at right now. And then, again, that's human arrogance to think, oh, I'd love to do that. And then when you show up, you're like, I don't know what I was asking for. So, yeah, I am unbelievably fulfilled in what God's asking me to do right now, despite the amount of comments, like what that person did to you at Beauty for Ashes. Like, when we were hiring Jared, we went through a search agency. So that search agency needed to find out everything there was to know about us. So they would come and they would listen to our services. And on our second call with that, this guy who has been doing ministry all over the country in all kinds of churches says, Scott, what in the world are you doing at a church of 300 people in Charleston, West Virginia, with a teaching gift like that? And I go, I don't know. That's where the Lord wants me to be. Yeah. And I hear that from people all the time that are not affiliated to our church. Because I know the people that come to our church like our preaching, or else they would go somewhere else. Yeah. People not affiliated with our church. And I go, I don't know. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter, because I only want to do what God wants me to do, because it's in the center of that will. If I went and chased something bigger, I could ruin everything and miss out on the blessing of God. I would rather do what's right here in front of me that I know God has called me to do, because in the center of God's will is where you find complete fulfillment.
Yes. Absolutely, 100%. So there you have it. Obedience matters. Faithfulness in where you are at matters. And if you can get to that place where you understand this is what matters most, I am in the place that God has me for me in this time. So my motives of doing it are different because I'm doing it for the Lord. I believe that you will find more fulfillment in that once you get to that place and make that switch in your perspective of those things. So we hope that this has been helpful to you. We will be back here again next week as we'll dive into our Easter teaching. And so we'll have some more practical next steps for you and your faith journey then.
Thanks for tuning in to The Extra Point. Be sure to subscribe to the Southridge Church podcast and tune in every Wednesday for another episode of The Extra Point.